Welcome back to Deep Dive Stoic.
Yeah.
In today's episode, we're diving into the wisdom of Stoicism,
Okay.
particularly the insights of Marcus Aurelius,
Right.
to explore a crucial aspect of navigating life's relationships. Emotional detachment. Life, as you know, involves forming bonds.
Yeah.
And it can be incredibly challenging when those bonds break, or when the emotional investment isn't quite mirrored.
Right. Yeah.
You might find yourself wondering, how do I stop caring so much?
Yeah.
Or can I truly detach emotionally without losing a part of myself? Tough questions.
Yeah, those are the very questions that Stoicism, especially as articulated by Marcus Aurelius,
Right.
helps us navigate. It's
Exactly.
important to understand right from the start that Stoicism isn't about suppressing or avoiding emotions.
Right.
Instead, it offers a pathway to understanding and balancing them so that we can move through life with greater clarity and inner peace.
Exactly. Emotional detachment in the Stoic sense isn't about becoming cold or indifferent. It's about regaining your power.
Right.
The power to respond to situations with reason rather than being swept away by intense emotions.
That's right.
So in this deep dive, we're going to explore 5 timeless Stoic rules
Okay.
to help you achieve this emotional detachment in your relationships,
Right.
drawing deeply from the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius.
I like it.
This isn't just abstract philosophy.
No.
It's practical advice you can apply to your life right now.
That's what we're going for.
Let's begin with our first rule.
Okay.
Understand the impermanence of life.
Marcus Aurelius wisely noted, everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth.
Wow.
This really sets the stage for understanding impermanence.
Okay.
When we form emotional attachments, we often build a very personal narrative around the other person and their role in our lives.
Yeah.
A narrative we treat as unshakable truth.
That's so insightful.
Yeah.
We create this mental framework of how things should be, and our emotional well-being becomes tightly bound to that framework.
Yeah.
But the reality, as the Stoics recognized,
yeah.
is that all relationships are inherently transient.
They are.
People enter our lives, and for various reasons, distance, different paths, even death,
Right.
they eventually leave, or their role changes.
And this isn't presented by the Stoics as a pessimistic view,
Right.
but rather as a fundamental truth of existence.
Okay.
Embracing this impermanence, this constant state of flux,
Yeah.
is the very first step towards emotional detachment.
Okay.
When you truly understand that no connection is permanent, it naturally shifts your focus to the present moment
All right.
and the value of what you have now.
It reminds me of that classic image of holding sand in your hand.
Oh, yeah.
The harder you try to grip it and hold on to every grain, the faster it slips through your fingers.
It does. It does.
Trying to possess or cling too tightly to someone emotionally can often lead to a similar outcome,
Yeah.
a gradual fading of the connection.
Precisely. And recognizing this inherent impermanence
Yeah.
cultivates a deeper appreciation for the present.
Right.
Instead of constantly worrying about potential loss or dwelling on past connections,
Yeah.
you become more attuned to the value of the current interaction.
I see.
What's fascinating here is how accepting this flow of life actually reduces the anxiety we feel about things ending.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I've definitely experienced this in my own life.
I-
I had a close friendship that lasted well over a decade.
Okay.
We were practically inseparable.
Wow.
But as time went on, our lives diverged.
Yeah.
Our interests changed.
It happens.
I found myself clinging to the past, to how things used to be, and
Yeah.
I felt this growing resentment and sadness as the distance widened.
I do.
The emotional energy I was pouring into maintaining this past version of our friendship felt like a heavyweight,
Yeah.
especially because it wasn't really reciprocated anymore.
So the aha moment here is recognizing that resisting this natural shift caused you more pain than accepting it would have.
Oh, yeah. It highlights how our resistance to change often amplifies our suffering.
Exactly. It wasn't until I truly accepted that the friendship had simply run its natural course,
Right.
that it had evolved into something different,
Yeah.
that I could finally release that emotional weight.
Okay.
It was a difficult process, but ultimately liberating.
Marcus Aurelius, with his profound understanding of the human condition, would likely say that by accepting the eventual end of things,
Yeah.
we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering when those endings inevitably arrive.
I see.
Think of it this way. Understanding impermanence isn't about predicting doom.
Right.
It's about aligning ourselves with reality.
Okay, let's move on to our second Stoic rule for emotional detachment.
Okay.
Master your emotions through rational thought.
Okay.
Now, the common feeling, especially when you're deeply connected to someone, is that your emotions just happen to you.
Right.
You feel intense pain, sadness, or anger, and it seems like an automatic response that you have little control over.
That's a very common perception.
And it certainly feels that way sometimes.
Yeah.
However, from a Stoic perspective,
Okay.
and particularly through the lens of Marcus Aurelius' wisdom,
Yeah.
our emotions aren't these external forces that dictate our experience. Rather, they are deeply intertwined with our thoughts, our underlying beliefs, and the way we interpret the events happening around us.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Aurelius himself famously stated, "We are not at the mercy of our emotions. Our emotions are at the mercy of our thoughts."
Right.
He also emphasized the power of our minds in shaping our reality writing. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength.
So the core insight here is that emotional detachment begins with recognizing this power of your own mind.
Right.
Your thoughts about a person, the stories you tell yourself,
Yeah.
the interpretations you make of their actions.
Yeah.
These are what truly fuel your emotional state, whether it's calm or turbulent.
Let's take the classic example of a breakup.
Okay.
You're likely feeling a whirlwind of emotions. Your mind might be constantly replaying past conversations, dissecting every interaction, and asking those agonizing why questions.
The Stoic approach here is to consciously interrupt that cycle.
Okay.
Instead of allowing those emotionally charged thoughts to run unchecked,
Right.
you actively question them.
You do.
You ask yourself, what are the objective facts
Yeah.
of this situation?
Okay.
How else could I interpret this? You deliberately choose thoughts that lead you away from suffering and towards acceptance.
It's so easy to get trapped in those loops of rumination.
It is.
Where your thoughts just reinforce the pain.
Yeah.
But what you're highlighting is that the emotional turmoil doesn't arise solely from the event itself,
Right.
but from our subjective interpretation of that event.
Precisely as Marcus Aurelius wisely observed, the soul becomes dyed with the color of his thoughts.
Wow.
Your emotional landscape is a direct reflection of your internal dialogue.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's illustrate this.
Okay.
Imagine you send a text to someone you care about deeply.
Maybe it's expressing vulnerability or sharing something important.
Okay.
Hours pass and you don't receive a reply.
Right.
Immediately, a cascade of thoughts might flood your mind.
Yeah.
Did I say something wrong? Are they intentionally ignoring me?
Yeah.
Do they simply not care?
Uh-huh.
With each unanswered minute, feelings of anxiety, hurt, or even anger can escalate.
But what's the fundamental reality of that situation? The only concrete fact is the absence of a response.
Right.
Everything else, the reasons behind it, their feelings toward you,
Right.
is speculation and interpretation conjured by your own mind.
Okay.
The Stoic practice here is to challenge those automatic negative emotional reactions with rational thought.
Yeah.
Could there be other explanations for the delay?
Sure.
Maybe they're busy, their phone died, or they simply haven't seen the message yet.
So instead of letting your emotions spiral into a narrative of rejection or neglect,
Right.
you consciously pause. You recognize that those feelings of anxiety or hurt might not be rooted in the actual situation, but rather in the stories your mind is creating.
Exactly. Marcus Aurelius' advice is incredibly direct. Question your thoughts. Don't just accept them as truth.
I like that.
This empowers you to step back from the immediate emotional surge and examine the underlying assumptions that are fueling it.
I remember a time when a close friend stopped responding to my messages in the middle of what felt like a really important conversation.
Okay.
My immediate thought was that I had upset them.
Yeah.
I started replaying everything I had said,
Uh-huh.
convinced I had unknowingly caused offense.
Right.
By the end of the day, I was a mess.
I see that.
Worried, feeling guilty, and even a little angry.
And as we discussed with the first rule, our minds are so adept at creating these compelling narratives,
Oh, yeah.
even without solid evidence.
Absolutely. But when I finally managed to take a breath and rationally consider the situation,
Right.
I realized there were a dozen other possibilities.
There could be.
Maybe their phone died. Maybe something urgent came up.
Sure.
It turned out they had simply gotten pulled away unexpectedly.
Okay.
When we finally connected the next day,
Yeah.
they were completely unaware of the emotional roller coaster I had been on.
Oh, wow.
It was a stark reminder of Marcus Aurelius' wisdom. Focus on what's within your control. Your thoughts, your actions, not the outcome or the person's feelings.
Right.
By consciously redirecting my thoughts, I could have saved myself a lot of unnecessary emotional distress.
You probably could have, yeah.
Which leads us very naturally to our third Stoic rule for emotional detachment.
All right.
Practice negative visualization.
I like this one.
Now, I understand that this might sound counterintuitive,
It does.
perhaps even a bit morbid.
Yeah.
Why would we intentionally imagine losing someone or something we cherish?
It's a good question.
That was my initial thought, too. It
Yeah.
feels a little like inviting negativity into your life, doesn't it?
But the Stoics, and Marcus Aurelius in particular,
Right.
saw this practice very differently.
Negative visualization isn't about dwelling on the negative.
Right.
It's a powerful tool for emotional preparedness.
I see.
By intentionally imagining potential losses,
Mm-hmm.
we don't harden our hearts,
Right.
but rather we cultivate a deeper appreciation for what we have. Okay. And lessen the emotional shock when those losses inevitably occur.
So it's not about being pessimistic, but about training your mind to accept the reality that nothing in life is permanent.
Precisely. Marcus Aurelius encouraged this by saying, do not disturb yourself by imagining the whole of your life's troubles at once. Rather, as each arises, meet it with calmness and self-control.
Wow.
In essence, by mentally rehearsing potential difficulties or losses,
Right.
we build our emotional resilience.
So how do we actually put this into practice when it comes to relationships?
Take someone you're deeply connected to,
Okay.
and spend a few moments imagining your life without them.
Okay.
Picture the absence of their presence,
All right.
their conversations, their role in your daily routines.
Mm-hmm.
What emotions arise?
Discomfort, sadness.
Yeah.
The Stoics believed that confronting these potential feelings in a controlled mental space actually diminishes their power to overwhelm you if that loss were to become a reality.
I remember doing this when my best friend was seriously considering moving to another continent.
Wow.
The thought of them being so far away was really unsettling,
Right.
but instead of just pushing that fear away,
Yeah.
I deliberately spent time imagining what my life would be like without our regular interactions.
I see.
I pictured myself finding new ways to spend my time connecting with other friends and pursuing different interests.
Okay.
When they eventually did move, the transition was still difficult,
Yeah.
but it wasn't as devastating as I had initially feared.
Right.
Because I had already mentally prepared myself for that possibility.
That's a perfect example of how this mental exercise can soften the impact of life changes.
Okay.
And another key aspect of negative visualization is recognizing the inherent fragility of everything we value. Everything we hold dear, our relationships, our possessions, even our own lives, is ultimately impermanent.
That does sound a bit stark.
It does.
But I can see how acknowledging that could shift your perspective.
Exactly. When you stop operating under the assumption of permanent security,
Mm-hmm.
you also stop feeling entitled to it.
Right?
And when you release that sense of entitlement, the fear of loss diminishes significantly.
Okay.
Think about romantic relationships.
Okay.
We often enter them with the unspoken expectation of a lasting future.
We do.
We don't tend to dwell on the possibility of things ending.
So the Stoic approach isn't to be cynical about relationships, but rather to appreciate them fully in the present moment, while also acknowledging that their future is not guaranteed.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's about holding what you cherish, lightly appreciating it while you have it,
Right.
and recognizing that change is an inevitable part of life.
I experienced this in a relationship where I was constantly worried about it ending.
Oh.
That fear actually overshadowed a lot of the good times we had. But when I started practicing negative visualization,
Yeah.
I would intentionally imagine the relationship ending.
Okay.
And while it was painful to consider,
Right.
it also forced me to really appreciate what I had in the present.
Okay.
Interestingly, that shift in focus actually reduced my anxiety about the future.
Interesting.
And when the relationship did eventually end, I felt surprisingly more resilient.
And that's the core benefit.
Mm-hmm.
The true gift of negative visualization is the cultivation of inner resilience.
Right.
By regularly contemplating potential loss, you develop an inner understanding that you will be okay,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what happens.
Okay.
This is a profound form of emotional detachment. Not detachment from life or from caring about others,
Right.
but detachment from the illusion that our happiness depends on things staying exactly as they are.
I see.
Now let's delve into our fourth Stoic rule for emotional detachment.
Okay.
Focus on what you can control.
This is a cornerstone of Stoic philosophy
It is.
and a truly empowering concept.
Okay.
It's about clearly distinguishing between the things in our lives that we have the power to influence
Right.
and those that lie entirely outside our control.
I agree.
And when it comes to emotionally detaching from someone,
Yeah,
this distinction becomes incredibly important.
Absolutely, because a significant source of our emotional pain in relationships often stems from our attempts to control aspects that are simply beyond our reach.
That makes sense.
Marcus Aurelius, throughout his meditations,
Right.
consistently reminds us of the importance of directing our energy solely towards what is within our sphere of influence,
Okay.
our own thoughts, our actions, and our responses.
And what falls outside that sphere of control when we're talking about relationships?
Essentially, everything related to the other person.
Right.
Their thoughts,
Okay.
their feelings, their behaviors, their choices,
Hmm.
and ultimately the outcomes of the relationship itself.
Right.
The more we try to manipulate or control these external factors,
Yeah.
the more frustration and suffering we inevitably experience.
So emotional detachment here isn't about coldly cutting someone off, but rather about freeing yourself from the emotional burden of trying to dictate things you cannot.
Exactly, when you are deeply attached to someone,
Right.
it's natural to want to influence how they feel about you, how they
Mhm.
treat you.
Mm-hmm.
You might try to please them, anticipate their needs, or even subtly, or not so subtly, try to steer their actions.
Yeah.
But the fundamental truth is that you cannot control their inner world. You
Right.
can't force someone to love you,
Right.
to appreciate you,
Yeah.
or to behave in a way that aligns with your expectations.
I see.
The only thing you truly govern is your own reaction to their behavior.
It's worth taking a moment to think about times when you've tried to control someone else's feelings or actions in a relationship. Maybe
Yeah.
you've gone out of your way to impress someone, or you've found yourself constantly trying to smooth things over to avoid conflict.
Right.
How did that ultimately make you feel?
More than likely, it led to feelings of exhaustion, anxiety, and a sense of powerlessness, because you were investing your energy in something you couldn't ultimately command.
I definitely remember being in a relationship where I constantly felt like I was walking on eggshells,
Oh.
trying to manage the other person's moods and reactions.
Oh, wow.
I would overthink every interaction, constantly trying to predict and prevent any potential upset.
I see.
It was incredibly draining and ultimately didn't even work.
Right.
I was trying to control something that was inherently uncontrollable.
And what was the shift that allowed you to step away from that pattern?
It was when I started to internalize the Stoic principle.
Right.
I realized I was expending so much energy trying to manage someone else's emotions, when the only thing I truly had any say in was my own behavior and my own sense of self-worth.
Right.
Choosing to focus on that and to detach from the need to control the other person brought a huge sense of relief.
That's a powerful illustration of embracing emotional autonomy.
Yeah.
The understanding that your happiness and inner peace shouldn't be contingent on someone else's actions or feelings.
I see.
When you place your emotional well-being in another person's hands,
Right.
you relinquish your own power.
It's like being in a friendship where you consistently feel like you're putting in more effort than the other person.
Yeah.
You reach out, you make plans,
Right.
but the reciprocity just isn't there. It's natural to feel hurt and to wonder why they're not valuing the friendship in the same way.
But again, their level of investment in the friendship is ultimately outside your direct control.
Right.
Your control lies in how you choose to respond to that dynamic.
Okay.
Do you continue to pour energy into a one-sided connection, or do you redirect that energy towards nurturing relationships that are more fulfilling and reciprocal?
It becomes a much clearer choice when you frame it that way.
Yeah.
Shifting your focus inward to your own emotional needs and your own actions allows you to reclaim your power and create a sense of inner stability that isn't dependent on external validation.
Precisely in my own experience.
Yeah.
I had to learn to detach from the need for constant approval or validation from others.
Right.
Recognizing that I can't control their opinions or judgments has been incredibly liberating.
Yeah.
It allows me to focus on living according to my own values and principles, regardless of how others might react.
That's great.
And that brings us to our fifth and final Stoic rule for emotional detachment.
Okay.
Reflect on the bigger picture.
Now, when you're deeply caught up in the emotions of a relationship or navigating a difficult situation, it's incredibly easy to lose sight of the broader context of your life.
Right.
But Stoic philosophy, and particularly the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius, encourages us to step back and consider the grander scheme of things.
Aurelius frequently wrote about the transient nature of our troubles, our fears, and even our desires,
Right.
emphasizing that they are merely fleeting moments when viewed against the vast backdrop of time and the universe.
Wow.
Adopting this wider perspective can significantly ease the grip of intense emotions and facilitate emotional detachment.
It's about asking yourself those important perspective-shifting questions, isn't it?
It is.
Questions like, will this particular pain matter to me in 5 years?
Hmm.
Or does this one person truly define the entirety of my existence?
Exactly.
Yeah.
By consciously shifting your focus from the immediate emotional turmoil to a higher level of reflection,
Yeah.
you begin to see that much of our distress is often tied to temporary circumstances
Right.
and our limited perspective in the moment.
Sure.
Stoicism reminds us that no single person or event should be allowed to hold such significant sway over our long-term emotional well-being.
When we become overly attached to someone, it's easy to inadvertently make them the center of our universe.
Yeah.
Our happiness and our sense of self-worth can become so intertwined with their presence or absence in our lives.
But taking that step back and considering the bigger picture
Right.
reminds us that life is a continuous flow of change.
Yeah.
And relationships, however significant they may be, are ultimately just one part of our individual journeys.
Right.
We are all complete individuals with our own unique paths and experiences.
It can be really challenging to access that broader perspective when you're in the midst of a painful breakup or a significant emotional conflict.
Absolutely. But intentionally making the effort to reflect on the larger scope of your life
Okay.
helps you remember that you have navigated difficult times before.
Right.
You've experienced loss and disappointment,
Right.
yet you've persevered.
I have.
Life has continued, and you've grown stronger and wiser as a result. This is the natural rhythm of life.
I recall going through a really difficult breakup that at the time felt like the absolute end of the world.
Oh, wow.
I was so consumed by the pain and the sense of loss that I couldn't imagine a future that didn't revolve around that person.
I see.
But as time passed and I allowed myself to reflect on the bigger picture of my life,
Yeah.
I began to realize that while that relationship was important, it wasn't the defining moment of my existence. It was
Yeah.
just one chapter in a much larger and ongoing narrative. Zooming out in that way really helped me to emotionally detach and begin to heal.
The Stoics, and Marcus Aurelius in particular,
Right.
constantly emphasize the impermanence of all things.
Yeah.
Relationships, emotions, and situations.
Yeah.
Everything in life is transient.
Yeah.
And what truly matters is our ability to navigate these changes with equanimity and inner strength.
So by making a conscious effort to reflect on the bigger picture,
Yeah.
we cultivate a sense of inner peace,
We do.
knowing that life will continue to unfold regardless of our temporary attachments.
Precisely. This broader perspective allows for emotional detachment, not because you stop caring about others,
Right.
but because you understand that clinging too tightly to anything fleeting ultimately leads to unnecessary suffering. Emotional detachment in this context isn't about apathy.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that the tapestry of your life is vast and intricate, far larger than any single person,
Right.
relationship, or moment of pain.
It's like recognizing your life as this vast, interconnected web of experiences.
It is.
Freeing yourself from the tunnel vision that intense emotional attachment can sometimes create.
Ultimately, emotional detachment, as the Stoics envisioned it,
Right.
isn't about shutting down your emotions or becoming isolated.
Oh,
It's about cultivating inner resilience,
right.
gaining control over your reactions to life's inevitable changes, and understanding that your well-being doesn't solely depend on external circumstances or the actions of others.
Okay.
The Stoic path offers a way to navigate relationships with wisdom and grace,
Yeah.
leading to greater inner peace by embracing impermanence, mastering your emotions through reason,
Right.
practicing negative visualization,
Okay.
focusing on what you can control,
Yeah.
and reflecting on the bigger picture.
Right.
These 5 rules provide a powerful framework for navigating the complexities of human connection.
So the next time you feel yourself gripping too tightly to someone or something,
Yeah,
take a moment to pause and ask yourself, do I control my emotions or do they control me?
that's the question.
Emotional freedom awaits those who dare to let go and embrace the wisdom of the Stoics.
Right on.
So as we've explored today through the timeless wisdom of Marcus Aurelius,
Yeah,
emotional detachment isn't about becoming cold or indifferent.
right.
It's a journey towards inner peace and clarity by understanding the nature of life and the power of our own minds.
It is.
By embracing impermanence, mastering our emotions through reason, practicing negative visualization, focusing on what we can control, and reflecting on the bigger picture, we can navigate our relationships with greater resilience and grace.
Those are the 5.
Remember, the goal isn't to stop caring, but to care in a way that fosters our own well-being and allows us to move through life with greater emotional freedom.
Very good.
Thank you all for being a part of this deep dive with us.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody.
If this episode helped you slow down and reflect,
Yeah.
support Deep Dive Stoic,
Please do.
like, subscribe, and pass it on.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
See you next time.
See ya.